My family skipped my wedding to console my sister. Now, I told the truth. And my sister's wedding went from 200 guests to just 50. My parents are furious, but I finally stopped being invisible. I'm 28 years old. I'm married. I work in an office doing basically administrative paperwork. And honestly, I need to tell this story because I've been carrying this my whole life, and it finally exploded in a way I didn't even expect. The thing is, my parents never came to my wedding, and when people ask me why, I don't feel like making up excuses or protecting them anymore. So I tell them the truth. And it turns out that truth has caused a family earthquake that has my parents furious with me. But for you to understand why this is so serious, I have to go back quite a bit. Because this story didn't start with my wedding. It basically started from the moment I was born. Look, I was always the invisible daughter. It's not that my parents were abusive or anything like that. I mean, they fed me. I had clothes. I went to school. All those basic things were covered. But emotionally, let's say, I was never on their radar the same way as my younger sister, Emily. Emily is 26 now. She's 2 years younger than me. And from the time we were kids, it was obvious to everyone, including me, that she was the favorite. And it's not just because I'm paranoid or insecure, although my parents say that now, but because it was completely evident to anyone who saw us interact as a family. Emily is, conventionally attractive, like those girls you see on Instagram and you think, wow, she won the genetic lottery. I'm, ordinary. I'm not ugly, but I'm also not the kind of person who turns heads when I walk into a room. I have sort of dull brown hair, I'm short, always been a bit chubby, and I'm just average. Emily, on the other hand, is tall, naturally skinny, has that blonde hair that shines in the sun, blue eyes, the whole thing. And it's not just the looks. She was also always more outgoing, more confident, better at sports, better at making friends. She was basically the perfect daughter my parents always wanted. When we were kids, like 8 and 6 years old, I remember my parents went to all of Emily's soccer games but missed my piano recitals. I played piano. I wasn't super good, but I tried hard, practiced every day, and when there were recitals, there was always some excuse for why they couldn't go. That they had work, that Emily had something important that day, that they forgot, whatever. But Emily's games were sacred. They never missed one. At Christmas, Emily's gifts were always more expensive and more thoughtful. She'd ask for a new bike and get it. I'd ask for books and get like 2 or 3 used books. It's not that I cared about material gifts that much, but it was the symbol, you know what I mean? It was the constant message that she mattered more. In high school, things got worse because Emily started being more cruel to me directly. Before it was just that my parents preferred her. But she wasn't necessarily mean to me. But in adolescence, you know how teenagers are. She started making fun of me in front of her friends, telling me I was fat, that I was boring, that no guy would ever want me. And when I complained to my parents, they basically told me I was exaggerating, that sisters fight, not to be so sensitive. Never, not even once, did they scold her for treating me badly. But if I talked back or defended myself, then they punished me for being rude to my younger sister. It was crazy. I literally couldn't win. Emily went to college, a private expensive one, because supposedly she was very smart and had so much potential, and my parents paid for everything. I went to a nearby public university and had to take out student loans because they told me there wasn't enough money for both of us. Which was an obvious lie because they paid every cent of Emily's education, her books, her apartment near campus, everything. I lived at home and worked part-time to pay for my stuff. After graduating, I got my office job, nothing glamorous, but it pays the bills. Emily went to work at a marketing company or something like that, and according to my parents, she's super successful and makes tons of money, though honestly, I don't know if it's true or if it's just what she tells them. I met Kevin, my now husband, like 5 years ago. He's a computer technician. He's super calm, kind, treats me like I matter, like my opinions and my feelings are valid. We dated for 4 years before getting engaged, and when we got engaged, we had a small engagement party. Nothing over the top, just close family and some friends. My parents came, but they were weird all night, like distant, with no real emotion. Kevin noticed and afterwards asked me if everything was okay with them, and I just told him that's how they always were with me, that it wasn't personal. But turns out it was personal, because Kevin confessed to me months later, when we were already planning the wedding, That night he had gone to the bathroom and had seen my parents consoling Emily, who was crying in a corner. And when he asked if she was okay, my parents told Tim that Emily was upset because I was going to get married before her, and that wasn't fair because Emily had always been the one who should get married first for being prettier and more successful. Kevin told me, and I froze. I mean, I already knew they preferred her, but hearing that so directly was like a punch in the stomach. Anyway, we moved forward with the wedding plans. We didn't have much money, so we did something small, like 50 people, in a nice garden we rented. We sent the invitations 3 months in advance, very clear, with all the information. I gave my parents their invitation in person. When I went to visit them, I put it literally in their hands. I sent Emily hers by mail because we barely talked by that point, but I used certified mail so I know she received it. Weeks went by, we asked for RSVPs, and neither my parents nor Emily responded. I texted them, called them, nothing. Finally, like 2 weeks before the wedding, my mom answered a text saying they'd probably go, but weren't sure. Probably. To their daughter's wedding. But whatever. I was already so used to their slights that I just moved forward. The wedding day arrived, and guess what? They didn't show up. None of the three. I spent all morning checking my phone, waiting for some message that they were on their way or that there was traffic or whatever. But nothing. Kevin was furious. My in-laws were confused and upset. My friends told me to forget about them and enjoy my day. And I tried. I really tried not to let them ruin my wedding. And for the most part, I succeeded. It was a nice day. I married the love of my life. We danced, ate cake, all that. But there was this huge hole in my heart the whole time, this little voice in my head saying that not even your own family loves you enough to come to your wedding. The next day, calmer, but still hurt, I called them. My mom answered, and I asked her directly, "Why didn't you come to my wedding?" And she, completely calmly, told me they never received an invitation. That how did I expect them to go if I never told them? I was shocked. I said, "Mom, I gave you the invitation in person. 3 months ago. You put it in your purse while I was there." And she insisted no, that I must be confused, that maybe I forgot to give it to her and that's why they didn't go. I started feeling like I was going crazy, so I hung up and checked everything. I talked to the print shop where we made the invitations, and they confirmed how many we made and who we sent them to. I found the certified mail receipt for Emily's invitation, and there it was, with her signature for receipt. I called my aunt, my mom's sister, and asked her if she'd received her invitation, and she said yes, that it was beautiful. So it wasn't that I was crazy, or that the mail had lost them. It was that my parents were blatantly lying to me. I called them again and confronted them with all the evidence, and basically they ran out of excuses, so they changed their story. Now it turned out that yes, they had received the invitation, but they didn't feel comfortable going because Emily was very sad that I was getting married first. That I had to understand this was difficult for my sister, and they needed to be there to support her in this complicated time. I told them they were completely insane, that it was my wedding, that Emily is 26 years old and can handle her emotions like an adult, and that they had just demonstrated they never loved me even a fraction of how much they love her. My dad told me I was being dramatic and selfish, that I'd always been jealous of Emily, and this just confirmed I had issues. I hung up and made the decision right then to cut contact with them. I blocked their numbers, blocked them on social media, everything. Kevin supported me completely. He was as furious as me. Maybe more, because he grew up in a normal family where parents go to their children's weddings, you know? For him, it was inconceivable what they did. Some months went by, and I was not happy exactly, but at peace with my decision. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for crumbs of affection from my parents. I was building my own life with my husband, and it was enough. Then, like 8 months after my wedding, Emily got engaged, and my parents lost their minds with happiness. They started planning this giant wedding, like 200 guests, at a fancy hotel, with orchestra and 5-course banquet, basically everything my wedding wasn't. And they started contacting all the extended family to tell them the good news. This is where things got interesting, because several of my cousins and aunts and uncles, when they found out about Emily's wedding, asked how my wedding had been since they hadn't been able to go for different reasons. Some lived far away, others had commitments that day, stuff like that. And when they asked, Inevitably, the topic came up that my parents hadn't gone, and people asked why. At first, I tried to cover for them. I'd say they'd had an emergency or something like that, but after everything they did to me, I thought, you know what? No, I'm not going to lie for them. So when people asked, I told them the truth. I told them that my parents didn't go to my wedding because Emily was sad that I was getting married first, and they decided that consoling her was more important than going to their other daughter's wedding. And my family's reaction was almost unanimous. Everyone thought it was crazy, that my parents had crossed the line completely. Several of my cousins told me they'd always noticed the favoritism but didn't know it was that extreme. Turns out Emily's wedding was going to be in like 6 months, and when the invitations arrived, basically all my extended family declined them. My aunts and uncles, my cousins, even my grandmother who's like 80 years old, everyone said they weren't going. There was also an engagement party, super fancy at an expensive restaurant, and nobody went except Emily's fiancé's parents, and some of her friends. My parents were devastated and confused at first. They didn't understand why the family wasn't supporting them in this special moment. Until one of my uncles, my dad's brother, told them directly that he wasn't going to celebrate Emily's wedding after how they'd treated Ashley. That what they'd done to me was shameful, and the family was on the side of the daughter who'd been ignored her whole life. So my parents called me, well, tried to call me, but I had them blocked. So they called Kevin. Kevin answered, and the first thing he heard was screaming. My parents saying I had sabotaged Emily's wedding, that I'd been spreading rumors and lying about them to turn the family against my sister, that I was vindictive and a liar. Kevin told them very calmly that I hadn't lied about anything, that I'd simply told the truth when asked, and that if they didn't want the family to know what they did, then they shouldn't have done it in the first place. They hung up furious. By this point, I already knew what was happening through my cousins who kept me updated, and I'm not going to lie, I felt a dark satisfaction watching everything turn against them. It wasn't my intention to destroy Emily's wedding. Really? I just told the truth when asked. But seeing them desperate trying to save face after years of treating me like I didn't exist, it was like, finally, there are consequences for your actions, you know? My mom managed to find my new phone number. I don't know how. Probably asked someone in the family who still talked to me. She called me and I, without thinking things through, answered. It was one of the most painful and liberating conversations of my life at the same time. My mom started soft, almost crying, saying she didn't understand why I was being so cruel to Emily, that my sister hadn't done anything to deserve me ruining her wedding. And I exploded. Literally years and years of pain and resentment came out in that call. I told her everything, absolutely everything. I told her that my whole life they'd made me feel invisible, that I was never enough for them, no matter how hard I tried, that the missed piano recitals hurt, that the unequal Christmas gifts hurt, that paying for my own college while they paid for Emily's hurt, that everything hurt. I told her that the fact they chose Emily's hurt feelings over being at my wedding was the last straw, that it was the final confirmation that they never loved me like they loved her. My mom was quiet for a moment and then said something I'll never forget. She said that maybe they'd been a bit harder on me over the years, but it was because Emily needed more attention and validation, that she was more sensitive, that I'd always been strong and independent, so I didn't need as much from them, that I should be proud of being so self-sufficient, instead of being resentful, and that the fact I was so angry now about the wedding was proof that I was insecure and jealous of my sister, just like they'd always thought. I told her that was insane, that ignoring one daughter to overcompensate for the other wasn't good parenting, that I wasn't strong and independent by choice, but because I had to be, because they were never there for me. I was crying by this point. My voice was breaking, and I told her that all I ever wanted was for them to love me even half as much as they loved Emily, and I never had it, and probably never would. My dad grabbed the phone at some point and told me that clearly I had a lot of unresolved emotional problems, that I needed therapy, and that until I could be happy for my sister and stop inventing victim narratives, they didn't want to have contact with me. That basically I was no longer their daughter until I apologized to Emily and to them, and until I convinced the family to go to the wedding. I told them they could go to hell, that I'd never asked them for anything more than basic parental love, and they couldn't even give me that. And I didn't care if they didn't want contact, because I'd already made that decision months ago. I hung up and started crying like I hadn't cried since I was a kid. Kevin hugged me and let me cry as much as I needed. A few days later, Emily sent me a text message. It said she knew we were fighting, but she needed to talk to me. I ignored her. She sent me like 10 more messages during that week, each one angrier, saying I was selfish. How could I ruin her wedding? That she'd never done anything to me. That last line made me laugh at how absurd it was. She'd never done anything to me. Decades of bullying, of mocking, of treating me like garbage, apparently didn't count as anything. I kept ignoring her, so she started sending messages to Kevin. She demanded he convince me to fix things, that I owed her and my parents an apology, that the family was being manipulated by my lies. Kevin answered once telling her to leave me alone, that she and my parents had decades to treat me well and never did. And now, they had to live with the consequences. He blocked her after that. According to my cousins, my parents are now trying to do damage control with the family, saying I made everything up out of jealousy. That Emily's wedding is bigger and nicer than mine, so that's the real reason I'm upset. But the thing is, the family doesn't believe them. Everyone has seen the favoritism for years. I didn't have to convince anyone of anything. I just confirmed what everyone already suspected. My aunt told me that my grandmother, who's normally very diplomatic and tries to keep the peace, this time said very clearly that she wasn't going to go to Emily's wedding after what they did to her other granddaughter, and that my parents should be ashamed of themselves. Emily's wedding is in 2 months or so, and from what I know, only like 50 people are going instead of the 200 they planned. Basically just Emily and her fiancé's friends, and the fiancé's parents who don't know all the family drama. They canceled the fancy hotel and moved it to a smaller place. Emily is devastated from what I heard, and part of me feels bad for her, but most of me thinks maybe this will teach her something about having empathy. My parents are furious and humiliated, and honestly, good for them. They spent my whole life making me feel like I didn't matter, and now they have to publicly face the consequences of that. Kevin and I are fine. We live in a small but nice apartment. We're saving to buy a house. We have 2 cats who are our babies for now. He keeps asking me every so often if I'm okay, if I need to talk about all this. And I tell him, yes, I'm okay. And it's true for the most part. There are days where I feel guilty, where I think maybe I overreacted or should have handled things differently. But then I remember I didn't do anything but tell the truth. And it's not my responsibility to protect my parents from the consequences of their own actions. My therapist. Because yes, I did start therapy. After all this, says, what I'm feeling is completely valid. That setting boundaries with toxic family is healthy. And I don't have to feel guilty for prioritizing myself after a lifetime of being put second. I don't know if my parents will ever really understand what they did to me. Probably not. People with that level of lack of self-awareness rarely change. Emily maybe over the years will mature and realize how things were, or maybe not, who knows. But honestly, it's not my problem anymore. I have my own life now, my own space where I'm loved and valued, and that has to be enough. Kevin's family treats me better than my own family ever did. My in-laws call me their daughter, include me in everything, are genuinely interested in my life. It's weird at first, getting used to being treated like I matter, but I like it. I like it a lot. Last week, my cousin sent me photos from a family gathering that my parents didn't go to because they knew I was going to be there. All my aunts and uncles and cousins asked about me, and when I arrived, they greeted me with hugs and told me they were glad to see me happy. My grandmother took my hand and told me she was so sorry she didn't intervene before, that she'd always seen what was happening but thought it wasn't her place to get involved. I told her she didn't have to apologize, that what mattered was that now she was on the right side of things. It was nice, feeling that support after years of feeling alone in my own family. I guess the point of this whole story is that in the end, the truth came to light. It wasn't in the way I expected. It wasn't something I planned. It just happened because I got tired of lying and covering for people who never did the same for me. And if my parents want to blame me for ruining Emily's wedding, let them. I know the truth. My husband knows the truth. My extended family knows the truth. That's enough for me.